Hola adheres to a conservative interpretation of Islam. She works with other Muslims, writing and giving lectures on how Islamic law affects Muslim women in Britain. She's in her 40s and wears the hijab or headscarf now, but when she was in her 20s, she too wore the niqab.
I was at university and I was mixing with a group of very young, very radical men and women.
The backdrop was conflict in the Middle East and later the Bosnian War. Hola's group invited scholars from the Arab world who wove this international political context, one they termed as anti-Muslim, into a narrative about how British Muslims should live their lives.
One of the things that was being said again and again was that, look, the world is out to get Muslims. We are weak, we are vulnerable. The non-Muslim world is like wolves waiting to feast on Muslims. And the reason we are weak and vulnerable is because we are far away from true Islam. So we need to recapture true Islam in order to become strong again. One of the main topics of discussion by the scholars was that Muslim women, especially but men as well, need to be as different from non-Muslims as possible. Very, very passionate speeches were being delivered that, you know, we are insulting the memory of the Prophet if we try and emulate Westerners, non-Muslims in any manner, and that the women must be completely covered from head to toe, even the hands and the feet. There should be total segregation, you know, as much as possible at every opportunity, etc., etc. So I just started feeling really guilty about the fact that I did not cover my face and my hands and my feet. And so I started to. But we enjoyed being rebellious and different. We enjoyed the fact that not only were non-Muslims staring at us in absolute shock, but so were Muslims. I think my generation was very unhappy. We had experienced quite a bit of racism in the 70s, 80s. We were very sort of aware of the fact that, you know, our parents were immigrants, we weren't, but we were not accepted and would probably never be accepted. And then we looked at the Muslim world. We were searching for an identity. Never mind. It was bad as him. I'm going to read the same book.
Hola wore the niqab for 3 years, then gave it up.
I found it incredibly impractical. I enjoyed doing outdoor things, and it's just very hard to do many of those. I enjoy eating out. That's one of the things I enjoy the most, is eating out, and that is very hard when you wear the niqab. And also I think I was sensing this sense of racism. And as I started to realise slowly, well, maybe the fact that I dress so differently is not helping. The fact that I speak English and don't sound very different doesn't matter. The first thing people see is my appearance.
Hola doesn't believe there should be a ban on the niqab, but she thinks Muslims need to think carefully about the consequences of wearing it.
The whole situation at the moment in Europe is just so edgy, and there is so much disrespect for Islam in Muslims, especially Muslim women, that it's a very worrying situation. And in that situation, anything inflammatory about the hijab and the niqab just does not help. We just don't need this at the moment. But I think that the niqab does not help in terms of integration, and it does not help the community. Because the first thing people see is different. And no matter how hard you try to be friendly and nice and everything, you know, people have already made their judgment about you, and that is that you are different. And I think in our context today, in modern Europe, where there is a lot of Islamophobia, it's very dangerous, and Muslims really need to try and help the situation, not make it worse. And I just think that the niqab is a very visible way of making things worse for Muslims.
Hola doesn't believe that the niqab should be an issue for politicians, but she wants Muslims to discuss it amongst themselves, and she's concerned that that's not happening.
I was once giving a talk in a prominent centre in East London, and I was talking about the hijab. Does the hijab have to be very different to our Western identity? Why does the hijab have to be very Arab-looking? Why can't it be somehow British-looking? And most of the women in the audience were wearing the niqab. They walked out. They just got up and walked out.
When we get there for 6.
People are not prepared to listen. So we've got all these issues within the Muslim community. People are just not... They're afraid to speak out because they know that if they speak out, they will be branded as traitors.
So what she does is she turns...
Khola hopes that her daughter Umayma will in time choose to wear the headscarf as part of her religion. But as far as the niqab is concerned, she has strong views.
I would not let her wear the niqab, no. I would be incredibly upset if she did, because it would be going, back. I'm out there constantly in the community, preaching nice things, I hope, especially integration. And for my daughter to then show such a symbol of segregation and not wanting to be part of Britain would just be so wrong.
Sarah also has a young daughter. So what would she advise her to do?
This is a question my mum always asks me as well. I wasn't forced to wear the veil, and I would never do that to my own daughter. She's someone who's going to have her own mind, her own ambitions and her own goals, and she'll have the choice to choose whether she wears it or not. And it's not something I would personally impose on her.